Today, Ben Johnson and Ryan Poles spoke to the media, and the first thing I noticed is Ryan Poles got his swagger back. You could see him before he introduced Ben Johnson, but our new head coach said it best. The Chicago Bears are a sleeping giant. And I wanted to talk to you about what our new head coach, Ben Johnson, said. Let's get right into it. First off, he started off by thanking Detroit and talking about all the memorable times he had with the Lions and how much it meant to him to turn that franchise around, at least on the offensive side of the ball. But he will forever be impacted by the players and relationships he made in Detroit. And right away, you could just tell this is a head coach that really cares. He said the players in Detroit made him a better person, and I believe him. It's hard not to really like this guy or even get emotional during that press conference. But then he spoke about Ryan Poles. He said it was clear from day one that the plan is there. His vision and what this front office is envisioned with are aligned. And that's what I've been saying for 2 years. Ryan Poles' plan is respected around the NFL. And a young coach like Ben Johnson gets it. He said this roster is absolutely loaded with talent, and he's looking forward to building this team with Ryan Poles, side by side with our general manager. He also added that George McCaskey is willing to give the resources needed to build a competitor. It makes me think he stepped up as far as contract to the head coach and said, whatever this team needs going forward, build a Super Bowl team in Chicago. We have you covered financially. I respect that. Shout out to George McCaskey. Shout out to Ryan Poles. I love it. And then to Caleb Williams, he said, I'm excited to work with you, but it's going to take more than just you. But he was further pressed on what it means to have Caleb Williams here. And he said, look, it's clear that modern football in the NFL is quarterback driven. Quarterback success is actually a higher predictor of winning than turnover ratio is, which it has not been for the last 20 plus years. The NFL has changed. What a huge statement from Ben Johnson, a guy who really gets it. I've talked about it on this channel in the past. The NFL has evolved to more of a passing league with the rules about hitting a quarterback, how you can't contact wide receivers after 5 yards off the line of scrimmage. It's more of an offensive league and it's quarterback driven. Almost every coach we've ever had, though, has preached about how important turnovers are. I never heard Eberflus talking about how important quarterbacks are or how it's a quarterback driven league. He seemed to dismiss that fact the entire time he was here. But Ben Johnson, this is a guy who understands how the NFL is changing. And now more than ever, quarterbacks are how you win games, especially in the playoffs. And Ben Johnson in Detroit simply would have always been limited with Jared Goff. He said there's no doubt that Caleb played a large part into his decision. He called Caleb a phenomenal talent, and he said that Caleb had, as most rookie quarterbacks do, an up and down year their rookie season. He said he sees his role as supporting Caleb, but overall, this offense will be calibrated around our rookie quarterback, who's no longer a rookie going into his second season. He put it in simple terms here. Unlike Matt Nagy, he's not going to try to take a playbook and drop it on Caleb Williams' head. He said he's going to build the playbook around our quarterback. He said he looks forward to challenging Caleb and pushing him to continue to grow and develop. But he was pressed by Courtney Cronin even further on how much having a quarterback helps, and Ben Johnson just smiled and said, having a quarterback helps. I loved his chuckle and smirk as a response, but it's simply a fact. Having a franchise quarterback was a big factor in Ben Johnson's decision. Sorry to Raiders fans. But if ever a coach actually understood what it meant to build and call plays on offense in Chicago, this guy gets it. And he knows what the NFC North is like. He wanted to stay in this division. He knows it's the toughest division in football, and in my opinion, the best division in the NFL. But when it comes to the playoffs, these quarterbacks didn't have much success. Ben Johnson knows he's coming to a team that in a year or two could have the best quarterback in the NFC North, and I say that with a straight face. But he said it himself. To be frank with you, he's always enjoyed beating Matt LaFleur twice a year. I almost jumped out of my chair when I heard that, but I could not help smirking. FGB, FGB, FGB. Ben Johnson is crystal clear with his communication. All of his players in Detroit have talked about his accountability and his ability to communicate and put players in a position to succeed. He doesn't care about ego. He's not here to prove he's the smartest guy in the world. He's here to coach and develop football players and win football games. He even said it when talking about bringing in other coordinators. He's fine with the more experienced coach helping him as a defensive coordinator and having someone else in the staff to lean on. He wants to set accountability from all angles, not just himself, but also his defensive coordinator, his offensive coordinator. It's going to be thorough throughout the building. This is a guy that really gets it, and he preaches accountability. He said accountability, integrity, and team first attitude. There were no hits philosophies or any corny principles like that, just straight facts. Accountability, integrity, and team first, not me first. I love it. But the biggest part was accountability, something our locker room lacked. But there was a statement that Ben Johnson made that told me he really, really gets it. He talked about how the coaches have to step up. Great locker rooms like the Steelers, the Chiefs, and the other teams that have sustained success in the NFL, they have veteran players that set the culture in those locker rooms. But they don't start off doing that. They inherit the culture from their head coach, and it's something that takes time to develop. It's not overnight. And right now, we don't have that in Chicago. Ben Johnson understands that. He realizes that the coaches have to set the tone. We don't have the same locker room that Mike Tomlin has in Pittsburgh. So the coaches have to teach the veteran players what it means to be accountable in the NFL, what it means to be a professional in the league. And I'm not taking a shot at any of our veteran players. Some of them very well get it. But as an entire locker room, every single player has to get it, and the veterans have to lead with that. And now we have the coaches in place to hold people accountable if they step out of line. And that was a real statement from Ben Johnson. I love this guy. I couldn't be happier he's our head coach. But he spoke more about Ryan Poles and his alignment with our general manager as well. He said he truly believes in the character and the integrity of this man. Speaking about Ryan Poles, and he talked about the vision and how much he believes in this roster and what Ryan Poles has done. He added that they are going to be locked at the hip and connected every step of the way. Ben Johnson and Ryan Poles building around our franchise quarterback. Finally, Ryan Poles gets his head coach to pair with his franchise quarterback. This has been part of Poles' plan all along. But then Ben Johnson added the most flattering statement about Ryan Poles in this roster. He said Chicago is a sleeping giant. And he added that as a head coach, he was more worried about the Chicago Bears than any other team in the division. He went on adding that this team will not look like Detroit did on offense. He's going to build around the talent we have here already, a coach that builds around his talent. Imagine that. He then talked multiple times about how much he likes the talent on this roster and how much he believes in Poles' vision. And then he said something that I've been saying for 2.5 years now. Nobody in the national media seems to understand how set up this team is for future success right now. We are in the best position we've ever been in the last 25 plus years as a franchise, and it's because of our general manager, Ryan Poles. Yet the entire media wanted to fire him. I have receipts from almost every single Bears media person out there saying we should fire Ryan Poles. It's a sad reality, and my final point is, and something that I wanted to address, I had one concern about Ben Johnson before we hired him, and it was how he will be as a leader of a football team. Because that's the biggest question with an offensive coordinator coming to be a head coach. But he answered those questions to me. How he communicates, how he speaks about accountability, and how he controls the room when he talks, those are things that Matt Eberflus and most of our previous coaches have lacked. Even the way he handles the media. With his smirks to their blatantly obvious questions, he seems like a real leader. And he came from Dan Campbell's example of how to define culture. He came from the locker room where they bite people's kneecaps off. And he was the offensive coordinator calling the plays when they went for it on all those fourth downs. He's been with Dan Campbell since they were in Miami together. and he's seen firsthand what it takes to build a locker room and establish a winning culture like they did in Detroit. The Lions were awful when he got there. They had a bad offensive line, and their culture in the locker room was questionable. But Ben Johnson leaves the Lions in a better position than they've been in a long, long time. But now it's time for the Chicago Bears era with Ben Johnson. I love this dude. And as far as Ryan Poles, he got his quarterback, he got his head coach, and now finally his plan to take the North and never give it back can start to take process. Ben Johnson, it's time to wake up the sleeping giant that is the Chicago Bears roster. Vindication for our general manager, Ryan Poles. He got his swagger back. I appreciate everyone who watches. If you've not seen Ben Johnson's opening press conference, head over to the official Chicago Bears YouTube page and check it out. Please remember to hit that like button for me, guys. I have a ton more content on the way. Stay tuned, and until next time, bear down.